Hey,
It's Wednesday night, buddy.
Wednesday Night Live.
Wednesday night live. Well, here we are, and man, there's a whole bunch of them came in after I went live here. So we got Slant Daily Garage. Who's that sucker?
That's
Yeah,
one and
Uncle
two.
Squirrel says he blames squirrels. Don English is road toads, mostly old parts and rust. Don English again, I guess, and Ruckwart's Fab Race Mod Repeat from Northeast Dragway. So it's been a week since the last show, Shane. Anything new?
It's gotten a week, man. It goes quick. You know
I
what
know
I mean?
it does go fast. It's like I look forward to them, but then you're like, oh crap, man, that went by so fast. I didn't get anything done.
Right?
Yeah.
What are you in the mood? What's going on for you with you right now? Videos?
Well, my Mule 300 Buick, I finally got the quadjet sorted out. I leaned it out some more, actually. I had richened it up last time. I think on one of the videos, I did a quadjet video, and I richened it up, and I went back to 72 jets, and it made no change. And I had no adjustment for the idle screws on the base. I'm like, man, what is going on here? And I had already been lean before, but it still was the same way. So I figured, well, I'll try leaner. And I went leaner. And then I also noticed on the vacuum gauge, the thing's only pulling 16 inches of vacuum compared to like 350 Buick could normally pull like 19 to 20. Big block will pull 20 to 21. And I'm like, you know what? I got this big honking spring in here for the power piston. I might want to change this thing out, instead of having like a dual valve spring running it, I'll just have like a pin spring. And so I put like a really light spring in, and voila, she's happy now.
Yeah.
So,
I actually just did that with the Slant 6. I'm still running that 600 CFM on there. And I noticed that when I was going up and down some of the rolling hills, when I was kind of going up the other side, my airfield mixture would drop way down. And I first started with an orange, and then I think I went to I think the yellow is the next one down. And then I think the blue, now don't quote me, but I think the blue is the lightest one. So right now I'm on the lightest one. So I can still go up and down the hills, stay right in the 13.0, and then when I hammer it, I get down into like the 12.5, and that thing seems to be the most happy there. And I'm hoping to get during drag week at least. Man, it'd be nice to get out of the 16s, but if I could just keep a 16.2 out of this thing, that'd be awesome.
Well, and you're also looking at fuel economy too. That's one of the things that I like the most is, okay, so and I really was never big into the fuel economy thing, and it wasn't until I got that white Ford truck.
Yeah.
Dug out of the field in San Diego. I would say that fuel economy numbers, chasing fuel economy numbers, is the biggest hot rodding thing I've ever done. Right? It's so freaking hard, and it's
hard.
Oh yeah, and it's not logical. Some of the stuff doesn't make any sense. Why it does it?
Yeah.
I built that big quench motor. You remember when I was telling you I was building a quench motor for this?
Yep.
And I got it. It had 20 thousandths of clearance between the head and the top of the piston, and the compression ratio was 10 3/4 to 1. And you're like, you got the wrong cam, and it's all wrong, and I had special ground this cam, and Shane's telling me, yep, that thing's a freaking paperweight, you shouldn't even use it. Like, oh dude, you're hurting my feelings now. And I put it in there, but it was a detonating bitch. If you had that motor, you ran on 93, it would run on 93 great.
Yeah.
If you had to drop to 91, you couldn't drive it. You literally couldn't pull your own weight. It would knock so bad. And it was all that cylinder pressure. I should have bled some of it off and had more overlap on the exhaust side and not such a tight LSA, right? And
so, widen the LSA out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it probably would have done better that way. But yeah, live and learn, I guess.
Yeah.
But it still knocked down 25 as was, right?
Yeah.
But
that's actually about the best I'm getting right now to mine is about, if I keep it under 65, if I do 65 to 60 miles an hour, I can pull 25 to 26 the way it sits right now. It's just that it's designed like a brick. And the second I get over 65, let's call it 70, that's when I start getting the 22, 23 miles to the gallon. And I'm hoping with this next drag week coming up that I can pull at least, let's call it, because remember, I'm going to be drag racing during this, and there's going to be a lot of idling and so on and so forth.
Right.
I'm going to try to get at least 18 out of it. That's good. That's my goal.
Well, there was something I saw one day that on the oil burner website, which was a lot of Cummins guys, a lot of 6.5 diesels, 7.3 Power Stroke stuff. And guys were saying if you keep the engine RPM below 1600 on a diesel, that's where you get the best fuel economy. Well, I figured out it doesn't matter which engine, gasoline or diesel. It's the same thing. If you can keep the RPM at 1600, that's where it's actually going to be the happy point, right? Because it starts to crest and use a ton more fuel, and then it becomes exponential. The faster you go, the more RPM you turn.
More load. Yep.
Yeah. And so I thought, well, let's see what happens if I can get this thing down to 1600 RPM. And man, that's 61 miles an hour in that white truck. And it'll do better numbers. But gosh, man, you want to talk about slow going?
Yeah. I
God,
know.
when you drive 14-hour trip that turns into 18 hours just because you're going 61 instead of 72.
That's the killer, man. I'm telling you, I know that feeling because I've done that, and I'm just like, I'll just pay the extra gas.
yeah, no doubt. I think this year though, I was trying to get that thing to run on 87, and I've got it ironed out. It runs on 87, and I get about 19-20 on 87. Mm-hmm. It's not happy, and I mean, if you got to do something with it, it's like really not happy. But it doesn't have 10 3/4 and 1 compression anymore. It ate that camshaft, and then I bought a custom set of pistons to drop the compression down. But now it's 9.6 to 1 is what I'm running.
Aluminum heads or cast iron head?
It's aluminum head. Yeah.
Even with the 10-3-1, it was detonating. Oh, because the quench. That's right. Yeah.
It was really tight.
Yeah.
And then I had that horrible camshaft in it that was designed for a high torque motor, and it needed a lot of that overlap.
Yeah.
But I was chasing too much at one time. I should have listened to you from the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we got here for questions. It says NSB Custom Cars, howdy, Dallas and Shane and everyone. We got Aaron. I don't want to murder your last name, Aaron. Jagger Munson, aloha from North Dakota. Well, aloha, buddy. I wonder, is it getting cold up there yet?
He says aloha, so it must be still warm.
It could be. Let's see. Don English is going to be porting some cylinder heads, and he said he's not going to be porting until this winter because the weather gets nasty, or when the weather gets nasty. I do the same thing. I always try to get like all the parts that I have cleaned. I've noticed when you clean them outside using like a chemical degreaser, if it's hot outside, the stuff just pours right off. If it's cold outside, it does not work.
It doesn't work.
No. And so I do all my cleaning in the summertime. And that's why I'm usually like exhausted because I'm scrubbing stuff as fast as I can because I know the fall is coming, the winter's coming.
Yep.
And then I shoot them all with paint in the fall, and then I work on it all during the winter.
Yeah.
When I can close the garage down.
It's funny that you say that because my last engine I built, I finished it during the winter time, and it was like there's snow. There's a foot of snow on the ground. And I had to go out there, and I made a little tent, and I had two torches, and then I had an oil heater trying to get the block up the temperature so I could spray paint it.
And dude, I'll tell you a trick I figured out.
Yeah, what'd you do?
Because I was trying to get the grease off of them in the same thing in the wintertime. I took a heat gun, turn it on, low setting.
Yep.
I lay it in the middle of the block and just walk away. Come back 2 hours later, the whole damn block will be 95, 100 degrees, right? And it doesn't do anything to it. It just heats it up, right?
Yeah.
I was just afraid it was going to catch on fire. But, like the heat guns aren't meant to run for a couple hours.
Yeah, right.
It's usually just like heat it up, remove some paint, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I've done in the past, cleaning blocks, I went outside. It was snowing outside. And I was trying to clean a block, and I hooked up I was taking the pressure washer and take it directly off my water heater.
Oh, yeah.
And then blast it with 180 degree water or whatever your water heater set at. But man, will it run the water heater out fast.
I got an Insta Hot, so I don't want to have that problem now.
Oh yeah, dude, that works good, man. Just be careful because if you get it too hot, it damages the seals in the pump. I think it's the big one. But I was just working around stuff, right? The regular hot rodder, not having a machine shop and all this neat stuff to make it all work, kind of way around it all.
Yeah, I've done that.
Let's see.
We got our first question. Bicycle Guy 111.
Bicycle Guy 111. Hey guys, I got a 40 Chevy Street Rod with a 350 7R4. It's a 4-bolt main with 882 low compression 76 cc heads. Any advice for a single turbo setup? Will all cast parts live?
Not the Pistons. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was actually going to say it depends how much boost you want to run.
That's what exactly I was going to stop myself and say the same thing.
If the reason why I say that is the big things for those is the ring gap has got to be right. If you're going to run a turbo and any kind of extra cylinder pressure, you got to have the ring gap, and you're looking at probably 26 thousandths, right? So
minimum. I would go at 26 minimum. Yes.
But if you look at the factory Grand National engines, they were a cast piston. As a matter of fact, it was just a production line V6 Buick that went in everything else at the time. The same ones everybody was throwing away is those blocks and cranks and rods and pistons. There's nothing special about them except for that ring gap to support 8 to 10 pounds of boost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an easy thing to do. Those large cylinder heads, the large combustion chamber cylinder heads probably would be fine with a turbo setup because it doesn't matter. You're controlling cylinder pressure with the turbo. You're
controlling your own atmosphere. You're making your own atmosphere for the engine.
And matter of fact, those 76 cc heads actually are, I believe those are like 70s, 80s smog heads. They're the same runner design as like a turbo fire head, right? Which would have been like the head everybody used in modified.
Yeah, it's a good flowing head.
It is. It just has a large chamber.
That's right.
It's meant, you know, the ideal thing that for that head to be on, if you had a street engine, would be like a 383 stroker.
Yeah, and what's nice about the 700R4 for turbo is that it's got that 306 first gear. So you get out, you get the thing spooled up, and then when you shift to second gear, you start to load that turbo.
It loads it hard, yeah.
It loads it hard, and that's what turbos want. Turbos want loaded engines, so that way they can just keep breathing.
Yeah, matter of fact, the ideal transmission to probably go to if you were going to change that, I actually, that's probably a pretty good training. I don't know if it'll live long behind the turbocharged 350 Chevrolet, but I think if you were to keep it conservative, 4 to 8 pounds of boost, that thing would live quite a while, and it'd be one fat, because it's a 40 Chevy street rod. It weighs 2,600 pounds maybe.
Yeah, and you know, you figure 10 pounds of boost, this thing should make easily 450, 500 horse, easily 500 horse. Yeah.
And like the easy rule of thumb to kind of go by is your 15 pounds of boost number, right? 15 pounds of boost doubles the atmosphere.
That's correct.
So
doubles the power.
If your engine makes 300 horse at naturally aspirated, and you put a turbo on it and makes 15 pounds of boost, you're looking at making 600 horsepower at 15 pounds of boost. So you can kind of, you know where it's at under no load, you know where it's at 15 pounds of boost. You can actually just cut that in half and say, okay, I'm adding 150 horse at 7.5 pounds of boost.
You got it. That's exactly right.
So that's why, you know, I'm doing the same thing with the 350 Buick project. I just haven't got to it yet. And dude, you know what? So that was another thing this week that surprised me. I'm like, all right, you know, the short block I got from you. I'm like, that's my boat anchor Buick 350 that I was going to rebuild and turbocharge, right? A couple weeks ago, I found out the cylinder heads that I had for this 300 with 350 Buick heads on it, one of the guides was gacked, and it had a broken rocker button on it, and they ran it forever like that, and it just ruined the one guide. And so I'm like, man, I take it to the machine shop. The guy's like, yeah, no problem. It'll be a couple $100 to get it fixed up. And I'm like, I don't mind the couple $100. I hate the 6 months it's going to sit in their shop and I can't do nothing with it, right?
Right.
So I started looking at alternatives, and I have another set of Buick 350 heads that were on that Buick 350 that had the cracked block, and they're both cast 73, right? And I'm like, oh, they're both 73 heads. So I start cleaning up the second set of heads, and I noticed, hey, it's got emissions ports on it. It's got air injection ports on it. The other heads don't have that. They're 73. And I'm like, oh, wait. Oh, no. Because in 75, Buick added these stupid extra cooling ports for EGR. Right? And they call them the kidney bean head. In the center of the block, between the two center cylinders where it's Siamese, there's an extra water jacket opening that cools the back side of the exhaust valves. And I'm like, oh no, I need to have a block that works with that. Let me go look at the one Shane gave me. And of course, it's pre-75, so it don't have none of that crap. And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do with this? So that's a video coming up, guys. I'm going to have to make a set of heads work, and I think I'm going to drill it out with something small and put a pipe plug in it. But it's literally a huge. I mean, a 3/8 pipe plug wouldn't be big enough to fill it. It's probably needs like a 7/16.
Wow.
It's big.
Wow, that's big.
And there's two of them side by side. So, and they're kidney bean shaped. So I don't know how I'm going to get in there and straighten it out to get this hand drill in there. I might actually have to take something to the machine shop. All right. Let's see here. And we're getting behind. Okay. Bicycle guy, low boost with a goal of 500 horsepower. Daily driver here in California, probably on E85. Man, I'll tell you what, that's an excellent combination because you can ditch the intercooler, run it on 7.5 pounds of boost. It's probably going to make 500 horse all day long. Yeah.
And with the E85, I would actually open up the gap probably to 30 and put the 14 pounds of boost too, because you got E85. So
it'll handle all of it.
Handle it all.
Yeah. That would be awesome. And it would be, you could run virtually any cam profile you wanted with that E85 as well.
Absolutely. Because it won't make any difference. You're just going to keep adding more fuel to it. It'll be good.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see here. The Whitetail Rancher. He says, I have a question for you Buick guys. I just bought a 67 GS convertible with a 400, rust-free, and runs just okay. What do you think the market value is for it? Oh, man, you're asking the worst guy in the world. I buy junk most of the time, and that's what I do. Is like, I don't shop for anything nice. I never have.
Nope. I try to get it for free. In fact, I'm picking up a Slant 6 at Drag Week because it's for free. So that's, if it's not free or I can get it for trading of parts, I don't want it. So
and I'm kind of the same way. See, and maybe this is something we got to get into because a lot of people may not know this. I don't know. And I'm not going to tell you how to do your finances, but all of my car stuff has its own pool of money, and whatever I buy comes out of that pool of money, right? I don't add any in. It's just got to continue to grow itself or maintain itself. And it takes nothing from my family, right?
Yep.
So my house payment, family, all that, car money, all separate. But if I had to guess, if that's a 67 GS convertible, if it's just a convertible A body, you're looking at, they normally start about 15 grand if it's just a Skylark convertible. Now, if you're talking GS and it's a legit GS big block car, I would have to say it's probably 22 to 24 grand.
Wow.
That's kind of and it depends how nice the car is. And that's for a nice car, right? And if I was going to go out and buy a car, I would not buy a shit box I'm going to have to work on for 9 months.
Right.
Those are the ones that you buy for $1,000, $300, right? The Whitetail Rancher says he's not a Buick guy at all. Yeah, that's kind of the ballpark I would look at. Anywhere between 20 and 24 grand is kind of what that thing would be worth. So let's see. Clayton says, ethanol and gas, does it hurt performance? I don't think I have any options without.
Honestly, because all it's going to basically doing is it's just like adding more, it's called just alcohol essentially of just controls the detonation, so you can run just more fuel and burn more power. That's really all it's going to do. But it'll eventually burn out. I run what I call diet fuel, which is ethanol free in the wife's car, and then in the lawnmower, just because it just stays longer. And I put the stay bill in it.
It could sit for a while and doesn't.
It can sit exactly. Yeah, it does. But I run ethanol gas in my Slant 6, and I just don't care. I run 93 in it. But I don't care. I just throw it in there and it runs.
Well, so my take on this one, ethanol and gas, does it hurt performance? So when you're talking ethanol and fuel, performance, no, it does not hurt. As a matter of fact, the more you add, the better the performance gets, right? Yeah. That's kind of how you look at it, because let's face it, back in the 60s, Mickey Thompson had figured out if you ran gasoline, let's say it made 400 horse, You add methanol, it's probably going to add 20%, right? Just by itself. So, I mean, like 20%, that's 60, or what is that? 80 horsepower? That's 80 horsepower. It's going to add by itself.
For free, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And so methanol that's why it's such a go-to fuel for racing. Now, here's the downside. It does have a downside. Racers back then, they learned that it would eat up fuel system components. Okay.
Yes.
Methanol is corrosive. Methanol has like, I believe it has acidic properties to it.
Yeah, it'll eat the aluminum. That's what they're finding out with the E85 when you're running that high, just eats it up.
The problem with the daily with ethanol is the fuel system is not taken apart after every weekend and hosed off with WD-40, or you don't run transmission fluid in there to keep it from eating this stuff.
Yep.
That's the problem with the daily. Now, if you're looking at hot rod stuff, it's going to run better. If you're not worried about it, add a little bit of automatic transmission fluid to the gas, or to your gas. I know you probably, if it's only 10% ethanol, you probably don't have to do crap. Just put a little bit of fuel additive in there and go.
State it'll be fine. Yeah.
If you're running E85, you put stuff in there like a couple of capfuls of automatic transmission fluid. It just has enough lubricity that it keeps the components internally covered with oil, right?
Yeah,
and it keeps the methanol from breaking stuff down, especially your aluminum components. And I think, to tell you the truth, the cheaper the aluminum, like you get the Chinesium aluminum that's coming in these days, and it's even worse.
Yeah, it deteriorates. It's funny you say about the ATF is that's been a trick of mine in my Slant 6, is that whenever I go on a big long trip with it, would be right before I filled it up, I would take a quart of ATF and I'd throw it in there, and then I would fill it up, and because you're going to burn right through it, so I would drive the whole tank of gas, get it as far down as possible, and then I would just run the regular fuel, and then on my way back I did the same thing. So I just throw a quart of that stuff in there, because at the time it was really cheap. I still got
so ATF just cleans so much stuff up. God, this detergent in there is so strong. All right, so Made Muscle says, I prefer a methanol nozzle over E85, between E85 being inconsistent from pump to pump and availability when out on the road, it's worth it. Plus a few different liquids can be ran instead of methanol. And he's talking about methanol injection for, I'm assuming for the Whitetail Rancher, or no, who was the guy that asked about the 350 Chevy? The bicycle guy, right?
Yeah. Bicycle 111, yeah.
The methanol injection system originally came out from Oldsmobile in the early 60s. They had the 215 that had it was actually a draw-through carburetor. It was a side draft draw-through carburetor that had methanol injection. They used to call it like Jetaway juice or something like that. But it literally is windshield washer fluid, right? And windshield washer fluid is made of methanol and water.
Yep.
So just FYI, if you didn't know that, you can literally go get this. Now, don't go get the winterized stuff because it's got something else in it.
Yeah. Or that bug juice. Don't get the bug juice with the Rain-X in it, too. That doesn't work either.
That would wreck it. Man, what's this thing run like crap?
Yeah, it does. It doesn't run for shit. Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, the Whitetail Rancher says it's a legit GS for certain. Ran the VIN. Wow, 2024K. I stole it. Now I feel bad. I'm going to offer to sell it back and tell the old guy what it may be worth. Hey, I wouldn't do that, man. Never. All right. Last year I did the biggest bonehead move. Well, actually, May of this year. Right.
Let's hear it. What'd you do?
I went to the GS Nationals, and there was a dude I was selling parts at the GS Nationals. That's leftover stuff I had from projects, cylinder heads, stuff like that, used parts. And there's a guy set up next to me, and he gets like this milk crate, pours out this milk crate of quater jets just on the ground, like I care so little about these fucking, right? Like, and I get done that day, and I go over there, and I look at nobody's picking through this guy's stuff, and I'm like, he either just got junk, or he just don't care, right? Yeah. So I go there and look, pile of quater jets, and I'm always the guy that I'm always looking for 78, 79, 80 Buick 350 quater jets. It is the hands down the best GM quadrijet for a Buick, hands down, no
Yeah.
doubt about it. And so I'm going over there to look at his stuff, and it's like, I look at this one carburetor, and it's got slots in the air doors in the back, and I'm like, wow. The only time I ever seen that was I had a Ram Air 3 Pontiac carburetor I scored at a swap meet.
Oh no.
And I start looking at this thing, but it's a later model carburetor, like a 74, 75.
Mm-hmm.
No, it had to be. I want to say it was 75. And I'm looking at it and the slots in the doors, and I said, hey, man, you might want to look at this one. This is not a Buick carburetor. This is a Pontiac, and I think it's a high-performance Pontiac. And I said, how much you want for it? He said, oh, $35. I said, look it up before you do that.
Oh.
Right? So he goes and looks the number up. He didn't even know how to look it up. I had to show him the number on the side. Here, run a number on the side, right? And he looks it up. It's a damn Super Duty 455 carburetor.
Oh,
it's $1,000 core.
Oh.
Right? And I could have bought it for $35. Never be afraid to pay somebody what they're willing to sell something for.
Yeah.
Right? And I would legitimately look at it like, hey, this is a win in your column. If the car's not in bad shape at all and it's a really decent driver, you probably got a really good deal on it.
If he sold it to you for that, and if he sold it to you for that much, that's what he wanted to sell it for. So.
Right. And he was probably happy with it. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would.
That's a catch-22. That's a catch-22 because there's been stuff where I knew exactly what it was worth, and I asked him, "What are you willing to sell it for?" And they gave me a number, and I didn't even haggle. I just paid him, and I'm like, "Are you happy?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'm happy." I'm like, "Awesome," and stole some stuff,
And maybe the guy knows something that you don't know yet, like wait till he gets down the road and that quarter panel made of Bondo falls off, right? And that's kind of how you got to look at it, 4-pan full of fiberglass, the chicken wire on the quarter panel. And those cars, 67 is kind of notorious for rust. 66, 7, pretty bad rusty machines there. So
and also too, you also want to make sure that you're not taking advantage of someone. If like with the carburetor, that was cool. I would say that was probably a cool move because, he was $35. He didn't really know, so he's going to be stoked to sell that to someone for what it's really worth. So
but I still like, gosh, man, this dude would. There's a difference between not knowing and just being too lazy to look at, because he could have looked it up and find out where the numbers are at and then how to look them up, and he didn't do that. He just poured them on the ground out of a milk crate, crashing on each other, and then I'll sell them for $35 a piece. I felt terrible afterwards, and all the guys I was there with were like, "You're an idiot, dude. What are you doing?" And then here I'm trying to make $100 on an intake manifold, and everybody's like, "You're an idiot, man. You could have packed up and went home with that one carburetor and not sat out here in the sun." And yeah, I could have. But
you sleep better.
Jonathan Couchy, so how they are paying off some people's college loans up to $20K while I already paid off $16K, and the $4K I have is forgiven. Oh, all right. I don't want to hear about it because I got a home loan and I still got to pay on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Coda improvements, all 2-stroke small engines I use for construction work, live much longer with ethanol-free fuel and stabilizer, less ring jobs. That's probably true. Methanol has been said from day one, it will decrease the amount of oil that you have on the cylinder wall.
Absolutely, because it just evaporates, essentially deteriorates it.
Let's see, Mr. President. Oh, you got to get Marilyn Monroe to sing me happy birthday for that one.
Right.
I don't even want to read anymore, Jonathan Couchy. Okay. Tom Brown, can or why would a different cam from stock change the dwell demand for a set of points?
Cylinder pressure.
Oh yeah, that would have to be it.
Mm-hmm. Cylinder pressure, because it depends on how much pressure is on the plug at that time. You could also change that too by changing the gap, because also that would change the dwell demand on the points. Yep.
Well, in the dwell, okay, so I just bought a dwell meter and it came in yesterday, and It's a 1967 model and has a camera battery in it. If anybody's aware of what that even is, I had to do a whole bunch of research just to figure it out. It doesn't work because the camera battery is an alkaline battery and it went belly up, right? Probably 1975.
Yeah.
But this thing's never been opened. And so here I am trying to figure out this camera battery thing. And I'm like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to put 3 AAAs in it and be good. But Dwell essentially is 100% all about coil saturation, right? Mm-hmm. And you gotta have enough coil saturation to develop the spark that you need for the, like Shane's saying, the cylinder pressure that you're running, right? You want to know a major difference. Take an engine that had an HEI, electronic ignition in it, take it out and put a points ignition in there without regapping any plugs. And you'll find out what the difference and how much of a difference that makes.
Right. Absolutely.
Even if you set it to factory, I guarantee it probably won't even run on 8 cylinders. That's the case. But yeah, interesting. That Dwell thing is interesting.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a good one.
So he says, yeah, not a chance. I'm not taking advantage of anyone, not that guy. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's your choice. Yeah. And especially if you want to, I call it sleep well at night. Mm-hmm. If you got one over on them, and I am by no means Kelly Blue Book value on that 67 GS. I would probably take it and have it appraised.
Yes.
If you really want to know the value on it. But I know that an A-body convertible, just a standard A-body, is $15,000. And that's what they're going for today. But that's in the past 2 years, that number has gone up drastically.
Yeah. It's funny how that works,
All right. Okay.
See, is there any other questions?
I don't know. Everybody's saying that he should keep the car. But he's talking about he's going to take it back, and I'm fine with either way. It's his decision.
Yeah. That's what makes hot riding so awesome. It's all about you.
Let's see. Here we go. Clayton says, going to my first real drag race this weekend. Do you have a checklist for stuff to take? Car prep. Oh, man. And I'm assuming that you're driving it there without a trailer. It's essentially going. That's one. You're going to be hooked after this, Clayton. Let's just go ahead and face the fact. You might as well just
sell everything else
after this.
Yeah, you're done.
The other thing is I had the most fun drag racing at a track when I drove the car to the track.
Yes.
It wasn't fast enough to tear anything up. That's when it was the most fun for me.
Yeah, me too.
I do like going faster. Man, I often say to myself, I don't find myself enthusiastic about it. I did when I could get in the car, turn the key, drive the track, get there, have my sandwiches in a cooler, and I didn't have to work on it. I didn't have to wrench on it. I just went up there, ran the number, and had a lot of fun. Right?
That's funny you say that, because I've actually was talking about this just the other day. That low 13, high 12 was like the most fun I ever had. That was a really fast car for the time. You're talking about the early 2000s, and I never had to touch it. My wife would drive it to work, and then all week to college. She'd come back. We'd change the carburetor. I would put better fuel in it, change the timing on it, and we'd go street race it all weekend, then just give it back to her, and she'd drive for the rest of the week. It was awesome. Yeah, that was the most fun I had too. Also.
And so checklist of stuff to take. Yes. Okay. Basic things. Take a jack, take a spare tire, take them out when you get to the track.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Extra oil. Definitely.
Yeah. Take some bungee cords with you, because in case like your battery hold down doesn't work or whatever, you got some makeshift battery hold down that they'll let you run with that day. Make sure if you have an oil pressure gauge in the car and it has the plastic line, take it out now and go put the copper one in.
That's right.
That's the only way they're going to let you run.
Yeah, it's going to break.
Let's see. Take some basic stuff with you to like pull belts or change belts. I don't know what kind of car you have. If it's got V belts on it, you probably want to have a set of V belts. If it's a serpentine belt, have one belt and the stuff to take it on and off. It depends how fast you want to go, but if you're just going there to get things done, what they used to call a piggy tank or a small air compressor is like the go-to thing, like the ones that plug into the cigarette lighters. Because what you want to do is you want to drop the tire pressure down a little bit, probably from your regular road pressures, and then air it back up before you leave.
Yep.
Helmet, shoe polish.
Oh yeah, totally, shoe polish. Yeah, that's right, for the numbers. Yeah.
Or they have things now called window chalk that's like way more advanced than shoe polish.
Dude, I still love the shoe polish. Getting a little sponge out there, and it gives you time to think, what should I put on here?
Well, that's the window chalk is the same way.
Oh, it is.
It just comes off easier. I mean, like you could literally breathe on it hard and it falls off.
Oh, that's even better.
Okay. Yeah, it's the shoe polish. Sometimes you put the shoe polish on there, and you couldn't get it off for a week. Like you're hosing it down with stuff and scraping on it, and like that window chalk isn't like that at all.
Oh wow.
And then the one other thing I always take with me is a roll of paper towels, so that way you can wipe your windows off, and then that's about it.
Yeah, and Windex. I'm a big Windex, or just the spray on stuff, because if you got that, you got parts cleaner, you got a hand cleaner too, because that stuff works. It's got ammonia and it'll take anything off.
Doubles up, yeah.
And then also too, if I would bring someone who has raced before, and then just don't be afraid to walk over there and watch. Okay, this is where you go. You roll in here. This is how you do your burnout. This is where you're going to come up. And you've got 6 inches from this point to this point. Don't double bulb right off the bat. It's just little stuff, but follow someone. And if your car is fast or slow enough, I should say, have someone in the passenger seat, or if you can ride passenger, watch them drive your car and then switch and then go for that. I taught one of my good friends how to drag race just like that.
Yeah, I'm envious of you, actually, Clayton, because this is where you're going to find this is the most fun you ever had in your life for the amount of money that you paid.
Yes, right? Correct. I agree. Yeah, and then everything else changes from this point on. It does.
Yeah, you're going to be poor now, and it's never going to be this fun
ever. Yeah.
Let's see. Danny Boyd says, "Then you get people taking to school." Okay, we're just talking about them loans again. Well, that's awfully stand-up of you, man. Go over there and hit him up and see if he, either pay him, settle him up fair, or. But I would definitely get the car checked out and see what it's definitely worth. But I kind of say that's kind of the ballpark of what you're looking at. Let's see.
'68 Buick.
Yeah, 350 Buick. Okay, so stock heads. I don't know what that's. What is that? Simmed? Is that a milled with stock pistons?
Oh, probably milled. Yeah.
Only change is the cam. Stock dwell is 29-30. Now it wants 42 to 45. According to the dwell meter and vacuum gauge, something doesn't sound right there.
No.
I mean, I could see 29 to 35, right? But
yeah,
that's awfully high.
That's way high.
But when it depends what cam you put. Oh man, you know what? I'm wondering, Tom, did you do the mistake where that's a 68 350, so it could be 10 1/4 if it's a 4-barrel, or 9 to 1 if it's 2-barrel motor. Just throw a 310 cam in it, and it's got like hell of overlap on it.
Yeah.
And now it's running at 7 to 1 compression. I could see that 72 or that 42 to 45 if that's the case, and you've overcammed it. Maybe I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that seems like an awful lot. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, seems weird.
All right. So Jonathan Couchy says, should I look for a Dodge Diplomat for my first older car? Already had a bunch of 80s trucks and a 6.4 Hemi swap. It with 410 gears.
Yeah, with the 6.4, you don't really need to put the 410 gears in it. That thing makes so much torque. Just put a cam in it, and you've got a 500 engine right off the bat. In fact, we took a 6.4 factory, we ran just the VVT with the short valve runner, the SRT SRV system on it, and it made 500 horsepower totally factory with the factory manifolds on it. We changed the cam on it, and just to a regular mild cam, I think it was like 224 on a 116 LSA, something in that realm, and it made 600 horsepower. It's insane. So yeah, you wouldn't need to put 410 gears in it. I'd put like 355s, make it a cruiser, and then it makes 500 horse, so that way it'll get out of its own way.
Well, I was thinking, do you remember he's looking for a Dodge Diplomat, and those would be the cars that would be overlooked right now, right?
Yeah,
in 10 years, those will be the cars that everybody's after, and yours will already be finished.
That's right.
So a Diplomat isn't a bad thing to look for, and I believe those Diplomats, like the first few years, were available 2-door, right?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm looking at, because I didn't remember exactly what year that they made them 2-door.
There's also some ones that they're starting to get hot now, but like your Aspen Valari,
yes,
that time frame, the Aspens, they had a Roadrunner version of that Aspen. I think it was like, I don't know, 78, 79, 80 maybe. But those were actually pretty light. They're not too different than like a Duster or a Dart.
So in 1980, the Dodge Diplomat had a coupe, and it was a 2-door. 1980, yeah. They ran it for a few years. So anything that has a coupe is a 2-door, and so they ran him. That's pretty popular car. Looks like 1980. Oh, in 80, 78, and 77 looks like they had a coupe. Other than that, so they only ran it for 3 years.
There's also the unsung heroes that nobody talks about. All right, so you had the Chrysler Cordoba, which was the rich Corinthian leather that everybody talks about, right? But they had 2 off-brand offshoots of those cars. One was the Dodge Magnum, which I always thought looked badass, right? Because it's like it's very NASCAR. It's very angular and very NASCAR of the time frame. What was the other one? There was a Chrysler Cordoba, the Dodge Magnum. I want to say there was a Plymouth version.
I was all about the Cordoba. That there were so many of them in the wrecking yards at the time. So that I would look for like a 79 Cordoba with the brass freeze plugs when we were messing with nitrous, and we just throw the cranks out the bottom because we didn't know what we were doing. But if you saw brass freeze plugs, that means that the thing was rebuilt, so it had good stuff in it, so it would last a little longer.
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, if you really knew what the rebuilders were doing, what they were turning out at the time, stay away from them.
Yeah. But at the time, you're like, oh, that thing's been rebuilt. It's not, actually, you probably would be better bet just getting a factory one, like a factory Mopar. It probably lasts longer.
Yeah, lower mileage car.
Yeah, but when you're dealing with a $79 engine complete, from half price day at Pick Your Part, when you had to go, remember they had all those little pumpkin things, you go find a pumpkin and you get everything half off for the whole time. Yeah, those are the good stuff.
Oh man, those 90s junkyard runs in San Diego was the bomb.
Yeah.
Let's see, Art Jones says, what kind of advice could you give me to make very low end torque in my 77 Dodge D100? It's stock 225 2-barrel 3-speed standard 355 gears.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my wife's car makes really good power. It's a single barrel, and it makes tons of torque. I would change the camshaft, that thing, and fly cut the head. You get 100 thousandths of cut on that head, it's going to raise it up to, like, say 9-to-1 with that 2-barrel on it. You put enough fuel in it, change the camshaft to somewhere in the 215 213 duration at 50, put it on a 108 LSA. And that will make all the torque you could ever imagine, and it'll be all over with by about 4,500 RPM because it's a really tight LSA, and it will make really good torque, like right now.
Well, there you go. That's from Mr. Slant Daily Garage.
Yeah, I've done this quite a bit with.
You can't ask it for any better person to ask. So that's exactly my plan. What I would do. All right. So Big Block 402. Who's the poncho guy in the group? I don't think there is one. Can get my hands on a 76-ish 400 with 6X heads and a B&M Turbo 400 for a great price. Looking for a drivetrain to go on my 65 AMC Ambassador.
Okay, so my brother is actually a Pontiac guy, and I've only basically am a Pontiac by default because I worked on his car so much. But interesting enough about a Pontiac is they don't have a big block, small block. They have
Intermediate
Pontiac
block.
size.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's the same size. In fact, the four cylinders of the time heads bolt right onto a Pontiac head.
Yeah. The
So,
Trophy 4.
yep. So what I would do is this is the 76 400. It's going to be a smog dog. 6X heads flow really good. A lot of people desire them as far as
Actually, I was
flow.
going to say that's probably the best smog era head you could get.
Exactly. I would change the camshaft on it and just leave it alone. You know, I mean, if that's what you're going to do, the AMC Ambassador is a pretty light-ish car, and the Pontiacs make tons of torque. So don't go crazy on the camshaft, but yeah, just leave it alone.
I agree. I probably wouldn't even do anything with the camshaft. To
Yeah.
tell you the truth, and here's the things I do know about Pontiacs. The factory cast iron intake manifold for the Quadrajet is the best flowing intake manifold you could buy for a Pontiac, right? Like if you take it off and replace it, and then Richard Holdner just did a video on this recently where they replaced the intake manifold and it lost low end torque and it gained some horsepower, like 5 horsepower, but it wasn't worth the 20 foot-pounds of torque it gave up.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, you know, these guys say that this might be a myth, but it looks to be pretty freaking true. Right. So I wouldn't go nuts with it. I would wait till it no longer runs good or it's blowing smoke really bad. And I'd take it apart and I would change the pistons. That's the only thing that thing really needs because it probably has 7.6 to 1 compression, 7.7 to 1 compression. The heads are pretty decent. So you just find yourself a good set of flat top pistons, put in that 400, and she's back to cooking some tires.
Yeah.
You know, that AMC, that Ambassador doesn't weigh crap. Well, actually, what am I thinking of? The Ambassador is a bigger car. That's a midsize.
Yeah, it's a midsize.
It's still going to run good with that Pontiac in there. It'd be like having a Le Mans with a 400 in it. So,
yeah.
All right. Tom Brown's asking, could a vacuum leak cause the dwell change? I don't think a vacuum leak will cause a dwell change.
No, because you would hear that you would hear a vacuum leak. The idle would gone way up.
It has something to do with cylinder pressure.
Yes.
Danny Boyd says he wants a Ventura GTO and an Aspen Roadrunner. I'm right there with you because I want one of those. They actually made a Buick GSX in like 73 or 4 out of an Apollo. And I really want one. Yeah, I want one. They're rare as hen's teeth. And I've had a couple of opportunities to buy them, but they're hard to find. Wow. All right, Coda improvements. Pros and cons of using a trans brake versus foot brake on the drag strip. Have a 2020 Challenger 1320 with a factory trans brake that is tough to use consistently.
I've done it both, but I've never done one of the built-in trans brakes that are on the newer vehicles.
I can't see it being much different than any other trans brake kind of setup.
I think those ones you have to set it though. Like it's harder to like. It's not just like where ours you just push a button or like the way. I think you actually have to.
They're like that so that grandma gets in the car and she can't accidentally set the trans brake and launch that sucker, right?
Right. Light. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, like you have to intentionally do it is kind of the whole idea.
The only thing about a trans brake is that if you're running a Pro Tree, it's going to you're just going to be faster. That's all it is. If you're running a Sportsman tree where it goes 1, 2, 3 and then down, there's really no point in running a trans brake. Just
it's easier to red light when you have a trans brake on a Sportsman tree.
Yeah, with the foot brake, there's gonna be a less torque applied at it instantly, so that way you can you got a little bit more rollout, and you won't go as often.
What's funny is, all right, so on this screen that you're looking at right now is me, which I refuse to use a trans brake in my car, and you had Shane who had a trans brake, and we did a match race before, right? And it was on a heads up Pro Tree deal, and he would clean my clock off the tree every time. But here was my reasoning behind the trans brake, because you can throw this in your pros and cons. Pros reacts faster, right? Way faster.
Yeah.
Cons, it's way harder on drivetrain parts.
Absolutely, because there's no
got,
slack. The
I
slack's not
just
taken out.
got past my nitrous stage, which freaking pretty much nuclear meltdown every transmission I put in the car. I twisted drive shafts into pretzels. I broke axle housings like they were going out of style. And I'm like, I don't want to break stuff anymore. I want to go fast, but I'm not going to break anything. And I'm not going to put a trans brake in the car because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And for the 1/10 that the car would pick up in the 8th mile, right, which would probably end up being 2/10 in the 1/4 mile, it really wasn't worth putting a tranny in it every 8 months or year or whatever, right? It to me, it just seemed like it was I was being very conservative. Shane was not as conservative. He was pretty liberal about it, and he hammered on it hard. I mean, you should have seen this dart run. It ran good. But that's basically your pros and cons. When you do an automatic transmission without a trans brake, you're up against a converter. All the slack is out of the drivetrain.
That's a big key.
When you do the trans brake, it's like dumping the clutch on something at 7,500 RPM, and it has all the slack, right?
Yes, and you're creating more torque through the converter because it's actually going through. It's multiplying. Yeah, so you're if you're making say 400 foot-pounds of torque, you're now making probably like 475 foot-pounds of torque because it goes through the stator, and that's where you get the multiplication on it.
Oh, there you go. The Whitetail Ranger threw the answer out there. The Mirage.
That's right. It's the Mirage. That's right.
Yep. Okay. Let's see if we can catch up here. 5-year production on both. Big Belly Racing says 76 to 80 Aspen, RT and Valari Roadrunner 5-year production on both. Those cars were cool, and they were kind of like the GM Colonnade cars. They just never came into their own right, and all of a sudden, bang, they're right in your face. And here's everybody buying them up for nothing. Actually not nothing. Now they're high priced.
Read the one right down right here. The next one down is did they change the pistons for compression on the 81 and up Slant 6s? As far as I know, I haven't seen any difference on them. The only thing I can tell you is that the rods and the crankshaft were different. The head is slightly different as far as when you have, like, say, a hydraulic lifter style. The some of the valve covers just don't seem to match. They have a little kind of a different little whoop-de-doo in the side there. But as far as the pistons, honestly, I never noticed any difference between them. They're still 187 thousandths into the hole.
Usually that's what I've noticed that most of the manufacturers did was add to the head or add to the block deck height, a couple of thousandths here and there, and then it all stacked up to where you had a ton at the end, so the compression was low.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Let's see. JB's little shop is in. Let's see. All right, let's see if we can catch up here. Let's see. Jonathan Couchy says, do you guys know about these GMC 305 V6s? Would like to build one as a towing engine or a strange drag car. The one thing I do know is it's virtually an industrial type engine used by General Motors, and it's based off of like I'd say that the valve covers on those little things kind of look like a W-headed like 409, right? I would say that thing is more geared towards towing and heavy load application, and it worked great in like a pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
Drag car, nah, I wouldn't even bother with it. You're never going to find parts. Even if you tear it up, it's just going to be a one-hit wonder, and you'll never find another one to replace it. But for a towing application, it'd probably be massively fun.
Yeah, because it would just you could just keep loading it. It would just keep going.
Yeah, and they're known for that. I mean, they came in like not your regular run-of-the-mill pickup truck, but like dump trucks,
the big
garbage
ones,
trucks.
Yeah,
big, heavy stuff. Let's see here. Big Block 402 saying a 400. This 400 needs a crank and rod, so rebuild is in store for it. It came out of a Trans Am. The AMC has a 232 inline now. Okay. Needs a crank and rods. I'm kind of wondering if it's just spun a bearing, and then you can just get the crank turned and the rods resized, and then slap some 10 under bearings in it and be away you go.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. My brother's Pontiac 400 did the exact same thing. Is it spun a rod bearing, and then we took it out, went 10-10 on it, and we just put a We cleaned out all the passageways because they were using it. Remember at Quaker State? Remember it was like that wax-based oil back in the day? Yeah, it was basically coated, and every receipt in the glove box was a Quaker State. And I'm like, well, that explains it. And so we cleaned it all out. And we just did a 10-10 on it, and he drove that thing forever. It was awesome.
And if it needs a crank and rod, I want to say there's only like 3 or 4 different cranks out of the entire Pontiac line.
Yeah, right? Exactly. They all share the same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of them are all based on bore. And, there is bore and stroke changes, but I think that 400 shares like the same crank as like a 421. And there's a bunch of weird things. I'm not a Pontiac guy, so I don't take this to heart. I mean, I don't know them at all. I know the 6X heads because that actually comes up in just about any hot rod Pontiac conversation.
Yeah.
Let's see. And I want to say that like the difference with the earlier motors had a 2.5-inch main journal, and then like the later motors had a 3-inch main or a 3.25-inch main.
And that's the reason why they spin so much, is because people try to RPM them and they just can't. There's not enough oil there to pressure to keep that thing floating. It just
you need a lot of oil, just like a Buick. You need a lot of oil for that big ass main. I mean, it's really good for low RPM. It'd really be good for if you just left it stock, put a good set of pistons in it, try to get 9-to-1 compression out of it, and put it in that ambassador, and that thing would be a freaking missile.
It really awesome. Make it a driver, get in it and just load it with gears and get down the freeway, do 80 miles an hour, pass your guy's Prius.
What would be really awesome is grab, since Pontiacs are intermediate blocks, so everything's very similar, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. Grab all the stuff of a 301 turbo, put it on that 400, leave the compression low, right? And then give it like 4-6 pounds of boost, something like that. That thing would be a freaking missile, man. It would be fun.
And dress it up like a 301, so that way people think it's a 301.
It's a 301 turbo. I put it in this ambassador. I mean, can you think of a weirder combination?
That'd be awesome.
Let's see. All right. Oh, and Andy chimes in on our trans brake thing, and that's why Casper doesn't have a trans brake. That's why I didn't either. It was not worth it. Tearing stuff up.
Hey, go back up. There was a Gen 3 Hemi. Aaron.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to hit that one earlier. So Gen 3 Hemi question. The 03 to 08 heads have valley seat problems. Can an aluminum head be welded and repaired if it has broken seat imprints on one cylinder?
Yes, absolutely. It happens all the time. And that was basically, in fact, I worked at a shop where we wouldn't even really fix them. We would just put a new seat in it. We would weld it up and then leave all the little dents in the head and just put them right back on, and it would absolutely run completely the same. So it just, for a performance deal, clean it up. But if not, you can weld it up and whatnot, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Honestly, if you're going to get a new head, just get an Eagle head. You get so much more airflow out of it, and it's got better seats, better everything, better valve geometry. I mean, it's just a better head, and you can usually get them for $300 for both of them. And
the neat thing, a lot of that welding aluminum cylinder heads thing actually comes from Top Fuel.
Yeah,
Top Fuel, they blow the motor up, and it would just gack them. I mean, the motor would be virtually like a puzzle.
Yeah, right? They'd weld it back together.
The guys would take the time and weld that whole dang block back together.
Yeah.
Line bore it, line hone it.
Yeah.
Put new sleeves in it and check it all out, make sure everything's centered, and then send her back out.
When I was at,
that's where all that came from.
Yeah, when I was at Crowder, someone gacked one of those engines and those blocks, and they put a mandrel down the center, and they bolted up the caps, and then they literally welded it back together. It was in 4 pieces, and they welded the whole thing back together. Oh, and then put a mandrel down for the camshaft. So that way it was all in line, and it was a sleeved block anyway, so it didn't make any difference. They just cut new holes for the sleeves, threw it back together, and still ran the same number almost 4 months later. So it was just insane.
Oh, let's see here. I'm building a garden tractor pulling rig with a 225 Slant 6. What cam would you suggest for that application, Shane?
I would go as tight of the LSA as possible. And a lot of people say why? Because it's going to build a lot more cylinder pressure and build a lot of torque. And you don't care what happens. I've said this quite a bit. Past 4,500, you don't care on this thing. If it's a pulling rig, I would be, if you're not changing the compression on, let's tighten up the LSA. So that way you'll build some static compression with that. And I've ran a 208, 212. I've reversed the duration. I've ran the same, a 213 on a 108, duration at 50, keep the lift right around the 450 mark. That's like the perfect camshaft. That would actually work really bitchin'. You could run a single barrel carb on it, and it would get decent mileage, and it would basically just never stop pulling, and it would make power right now.
You know, and that makes me think of something here. He's putting on it's a garden tractor pulling rig, right?
Yep.
Let's say we throw all caution to the wind here.
Mm-hmm.
How about we deck the block, mill the head, take a ton off, try to get 12 to 1 compression out of it. Okay, as much as you can, because compression always equals torque, always.
Instant torque, yes.
Use the same cam that Shane's talking about, then go to like your Clifford intake manifold and put an E85 carburetor on that thing, or just run it on methanol, and eliminate the cooling system, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Right? And that thing would be a freaking towing monster. You would want that big, heavy crank in that. So the early Slant 6 crank with all that weight, because that mass is going to help you with, inertia. Once you get it spinning, there isn't much friction holding it up.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think it would probably help you. But that's the way I would see if you can get some serious compression out of that sucker.
Yeah, I've decked the blocks 100 on each side, 100 on the head, 100 on the block, and in fact, the one I'm running right now is 100 on both sides. Gives me about 9.5 to 1. The aftermarket Pistons that I got, I think they're Speed Pros, put it almost 187 thousandths into the hole, so I cut 100, so I'm only 87 into the hole right now.
Well, I'm looking at this down here. Danny Boyd's encouraging them to paint that 400 corporate blue like a 301, and then put the single turbo on it in that ambassador. It would be pretty bitching because it would look like just a turbocharged 301.
Yeah.
I remember the very first street racing article I ever read in I think it was Hot Rod or Carcraft, was written by, I think, around the same time that Freiberger showed up at Peterson. And there was a guy there had a 78 or 9 Pontiac Le Mans, and they looked like a 2-door Malibu, but it had the Le Mans front end on it, which was pointed Pontiac split grill kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they were kind of, I don't know, they weren't ugly, they weren't homely, but they weren't a Malibu. That 78, 79, 80 body style, they just got that sucker right. I mean, it's so simple and basic.
Yeah.
But yet it looks okay, right? Everything's proportioned right.
Mm-hmm.
The Pontiac, when they put that long nose on it, it just took something away from it. It kind of looked like Gonzo as a car.
Right.
And,
exactly.
But it looked like it had dog dish hubcaps on it. It had steely wheels with white walls on it. It had, I want to say it was like a 421 Super Duty 4-bolt main, cross-bolted block with a 4-speed. And those cars originally came with a Saginaw. You could get them with a 301 and a Saginaw. And the Saginaw was like, the rule of thumb used to be, if you put any engine in there besides the 301 Pontiac, the Saginaw was the next thing to die, right? It was literally like a transmission made of sponge pieces. And this one had probably like a Muncie in it, or I don't know, a T10, something that had to be pretty healthy. But man, was it fast. It had a bunch of spray on it. That was the first time I'd ever seen nitrous oxide plumbed in underneath the intake manifold. And it went in, they drilled a hole in the intake manifold, put a grommet in it so it looked like a PCV valve or something, and then ran nitrous oxide lines down underneath the intake manifold. So when you open up the hood and it looked like a 301 4-barrel, you knew that you were in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because this thing was nowhere near 301 4-barrel. And it didn't sound like it, didn't run like it. But these guys were like, this had to be like 91, 92. So back then the ticket used to be, you'd run a stock, you go to Midas and get a stock single exhaust put on the car, right?
Yeah.
And then you had manual cutouts, not remote, because they didn't make it such a thing. They had manual cutouts with holes in the floor inside the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And what you would do is when you find your race, and it'd be quiet as a church mouse going through that single 1.5-inch exhaust.
Yep.
And you open that sucker up, and now you're getting all, 12 gauges of the right to the face, right? Yeah. And then you rip one off, and nobody, and you don't even, at the end, you pick up your money and you keep going because you can't race another person in that town again at that night. and there was a lot of drive and ditch or drive and dash races like that where guys had true sleepers. And I always wanted to do an AHRA race that was focused around true sleepers like that, because that's cool shit. That's an art form all by itself.
Oh, I agree.
But those 301s were notorious for being. They were garbage. They were literally garbage. They were the 267 Chevy equivalent from the Pontiac division, right? Pontiac Motor Division. Every hot Pontiac had a 301 knockoff lookalike those years. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You can go two more down to Jonathan Couch, who was asking about the Alice chamber with the 225. You know, that's a style of tractor, and I actually have a Slant 6 that's out of one of those those pulling that do the airplanes. I forget what they're called, little porter things, and I have a 225 out of that.
Oh, the industrial 225.
The industrial 225. Honestly, I never saw anything different inside of it. Some of them were designed to run on propane, so obviously the intakes was slightly a little bit different. But other than that, I haven't seen anything inside.
I think some of them were the 2 and 4 barrel versions.
I've never seen the 4 barrel personally.
Okay,
I've seen
maybe
the 2
it was
barrel
just
ones.
the 2, which was the power pack, right? Or what do they call it?
The Super 6.
Yeah, the Super 6.
Yeah,
and I think that's where the 2 barrel versions came for. Was a lot of those industrial engines and boats.
Yes, exactly. And the Marine version was basically just another, branch off of that too. Yeah. So as far as internally, they were literally identical. As far as everything I've personally seen, there might be these one anomalies out there that are slightly different, but I've seen so many Slant 6s I've torn apart. I haven't seen anything different.
Well, and we're behind in the chats. We always are. So
yeah.
Leighton Farms, badass Pontiac. And so Danny Boyd saying Saginaw's are 6 and 4 cylinder engine transmissions. That they were.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Don't the 301 still have their air gap style runners? Yes, they did. They look different. Oh, he wants me to do a sleeper race. I actually came up with the perfect name for it. I was actually going to call it the Sandman.
The Sandman.
I thought it'd be a cool name, and then figure out how to make the race work. Because how are you going to dupe everybody? I mean, everybody shows up with their super sleeper. That's the entire intent, is the super sleeper. Everybody is a sleeper. So I mean,
draw it out of a hat.
Race.
Well, yeah, but you would have to put them in, because some of them are going to show up and they're going to run 9s, and there's going to be some sleepers that are going to be in the 12s. So you're going to have to kind of like have some sort of like, you stay within these two numbers, like maybe a 12.5 to 12, or do something like that. Make them in second increments.
Man, well, you know what? It's beginning to be a thing here. I love sleepers as well. It'll be a great event, right? It's like, oh crap, man, maybe I should have done that one. Sleeper race for sure, Dallas. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be cool too, man. Absolutely.
Let's see here. All right. Oh, well, Danny Boyd says, oh, hell yes. Now you have to trademark that. The Sandman. I thought it would be a cool race, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
That's
know.
A cool name too, man. The Sandman,
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Well, here you got the Salmonex, right? And Danny Boyd said you could do it with a cash day style eliminations. You could. I think it would be, you know what? Maybe that's what I should do, is put it all together and just have them draw chips, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Draw chips and then feed her the beans. We're leaving the clocks off. It's going to be just who's the first one across the stripe. There's no one opening the hood. There's no one opening the trunk. There's no one opening the car, right? You look at the car, you essentially that you're paired up with, and you figure out how they run and what you're going to have to feed it. I think it would be actually kind of a cool race.
That'd be really cool, because people would love to see that. You see a car pull up there and it's not making any noise, and all of a sudden it just sounds like all jet engine. Whoosh, down the track.
You remember last year at the Slanted Nationals, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There was a car that towed down from North Dakota, a guy named Ryan Peterson. And it was what was that, a 65 Valiant? 66 Valiant?
Mm-hmm.
I think the first run off the trailer, it ran a 650, right? Slant 6. Running 650 in the eighth.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, 650 in the eighth, just to give you a frame of reference, is about a 10 flat.
Yeah, that's right. It's about 10 flat.
Yeah. And this car looked like a 64 Valiant. Like there was nothing special. It had keystones on it. It had a small little slick that was 26 by 8, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It ran a 620 by the end of the event.
Yeah. And then he had a little bit of, he had trouble with something later on.
Oh, God, it ran good. That thing ran good. That's what made me want to do the Inliner National Challenge this year, because there's got to be more cars like that out there.
Oh, yeah. Dude, could you imagine that, doing like an inline 6 sleeper nationals? Ford versus Chrysler versus, Chevy? That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, so Fab Race Mod Repeat, which is Chris Cox at Northeast, he's saying, I've been trying to figure out a sleeper race as well. I think we got it. Everybody here is kind of throwing it up there, throwing it out there that this is something that they would find very interesting, right? Because I always liked, that was one of my favorite things about street racing, was the real sleeper. Not the farm truck, like, that's not a real sleeper. Maybe when he first built it, it was.
Yeah.
But if I heard that thing pull up next to me, one, it's not a farm truck by looking at it. It's got freaking 16 by 20s on the back. I don't know, some ridiculous huge size slick. I mean, it's a dead giveaway. But I'm talking real sleeper,
Yes. Yeah.
15 by 7 wheel, and they got regular hubcaps on there, because behind the hubcap they got the wheel screwed to the tire.
Yes.
And you don't know that until you pull the hubcap. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's got flat hood on it, just a plain looking. And what's even better is there were some guys a few years ago that did one with a like a 4-door LeSabre. It might have been a 2-door LeSabre. Had a 455 stage 2 Buick in it with single exhaust and a buttload of nitrous. Had like 8-to-1 compression, so when it was running, it didn't really sound healthy.
Yeah.
Man, it ran like 940, and it was like you just drove it in there like a 80 LeSabre.
With that much engine, you put any nitrous to it, it's going to make some power.
Oh yeah, and the Buicks, that was the cool thing about them. They already make a ton of torque, so then you throw a bunch of nitrous in there. That's the one thing that like is never advertised about nitrous. 150 shot. I give it 150 shot. Well, okay. Did you know you're giving it about 300 foot-pounds of torque when you do that?
That's correct. Because cylinder pressure goes through the roof. You know what I mean?
Way to the roof. So that's what was always neat, because you take a 500 foot-pound of torque Buick motor and throw a 150 shot at it. Now you're looking at 800 foot-pounds of torque, right? I mean, like, there ain't anything that's ever been made that's making that kind of number that's not a diesel, So
yeah.
Yeah, Chris, maybe that's what we need to put together at your track next year. We'll call it the Sandman. We'll do it out there at your track, and we'll call it the Sandman.
Which track does he own?
He runs. He's the race promoter at Northeast Dragway in North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half south of Norfolk, Virginia. Danny Boyd said that we need to call it the Sominex is a sleeper autocross.
Yes, that'd be cool too, man.
That'd be like a Lemons Buick powered Mercedes, all the windows tinted, coming to take your lunch money. All right.
Right.
Jonathan Couchy said, now I'm going to have to secretly run some nitrous on a small block Mopar 408 dressed up as a 273.
Exactly.
273 hypo. Yeah, and make sure you got the roller rockers on there so it sounds like the solid lifter motor.
Yep.
Let's see. The way to run a slant. No way to run a slant running those numbers. Insane.
That's when you're talking about the 650 when you busted.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man,
I saw it.
Ryan Peterson's slanted nationals. You should have been there. That sucker was a freaking missile, and he'd make a pass about every hour and a half. And his whole goal was he was there to set low ET for a legit drivable, like a streetcar slant 6. This was intended to be a daily. I mean, you could daily. It was running on E85, I believe, but man, it was a freaking missile. That thing was.
Yeah, it went good. It really shocked me.
Yeah, Dizzy Izzy was there too. He saw it. Let's see. Okay, Whitetail Rancher says there's no question at all on putting on a sleeper race. It would be super popular. I think it would be. Maybe that should just do that. Me and Chris Cox got a chat. We're going to put one together next year.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Let's see.
Jonathan Couchy saying a 4-door Diplomat with a 6.4 Hemi would be a sleeper. Absolutely. You figure you put a tiny cam in that thing and it's going to make 600 horsepower. That's any weight at all. Anything weighs near 3,200 pounds is going to be in the mid sixes.
Well, in the 90s, when the sleeper wars, like the cars I'm talking about, those were the sleepers, right? And that was about early 90s. And you'd see them at street races anywhere in the country, but it'd only be like one of those cars would show up out of the entire group because one, nobody knew who they were ever. And then two, you never wanted to show your hand, right? And I mean, this car literally could wreck just about every one of them in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And, when the 4-cylinder started getting fast, that's when those started getting weird because it was hard to pick sleepers.
Yeah, that's right.
The first one that I ever saw that was really fast was a quad 4 Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais, and it had one of that 1 year only quad 4s with the turbo, right?
Yeah.
God, it was a freaking and the quad 4 they were 225 horse. And to put this in perspective, the 5-liter Mustang was 225 horse. Okay. And that was a naturally aspirated version. If you got the turbocharged one, it's like 250, 275 horse. It just,
and something that weighed 1,000 pounds less than that Mustang,
Yeah. Problem is they'd blow the trannies up or they had so much torque steer, you just couldn't drive them. You'd be fighting the wheel. It would pull the wheel left or right. You couldn't hardly drive it. God, they were fast for what they were. But then came like the turbocharged Dodge Spirits, what was the Laser?
Yeah, Laser, the
Spirit,
the Shadow. Yeah, the Shadow. The
Shadow was one of them.
Yeah, and then they
were like 2.5 turbo. Isn't that what they were? Dual overhead cam, 2.5 turbo.
Yeah, 2.2.
2.2 turbos.
Yeah, 2.2s, and those things were insane. There was like I was telling one of my buddies had one, and it was just absolutely ridiculously fast. It was ridiculous.
And you couldn't pick them out of a crowd because they would literally come out of the factory like that. You could get a LeBaron. All right. If you've ever seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, that ugly LeBaron K car that they get, it gets all burned out. You could get one of those with the same kind of deal in it with a 2.2 turbo, like the overhead cam, 4-speed on the floor, and the car would run 1280s. It was just as fast as a GLH. Omni, but it's an ugly ass LeBaron K car convertible with wood grain and green, like vomit colored paint.
It's true. Yeah,
dude, they were hard to pick out.
Yeah,
they had wire wheel hubcaps and everything.
So, what was your first sleeper that took you to school? I know mine.
Took me to school?
Yeah. That you lined up at a light and you're like, I'm gonna blow this guy out of the water, and all of a sudden you're just
I never ran into one. I was always the dude that was kind of the sleeper. But I never got wrecked by one of those. I guess if I had to pick something that I screwed with that I probably shouldn't have, Southern California, I screwed with a bug we were doing a cruise, and what the hell is this Volkswagen doing out here at this hot rod cruise, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say it was Escondido. Escondido used to have a cruise.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Huh?
Yeah, they had a cruise
right down Main Street, right?
Yep, right down the Main Street.
Well,
every Friday night.
That was about 96. I went up to that cruise in Escondido, and man, I had my 66 Mercury Cyclone GT, 1390s. Man, it's not a bad car. Or 1360s. I don't remember what it ran. I think it was 1360 actually, but. Yeah, I was cruising around. I'll mess with just about anybody here because 1360 is a pretty good number in the 90s. Not bad for no power adder. And man, I screwed with this bug. And as soon as that dude got on it must have been turbocharged or something. That sucker was fast.
Was it a black and almond bug?
No, it was like almost like a baby blue.
Oh, okay.
baby blue, and it had that foldable top on the top.
Oh yeah,
Like the
a rag top, 64 rag top, probably.
yeah.
I know exactly whose car that was because I used to go. It's funny that you're saying this because I'm sitting here laughing inside. Is in the up until '96, I used to go up there with my bug, and I used to go up there and just murder people. And I had mine was black, and then right where the stripe was, it was 67 was almond, and then I had the rear tires cut and welded so it looked factory like the wide 5 because 67 had got the wide 5. And so I would run bigger tires in the back, but it looked factory. And it had a stinger out the back, and people would just think it was just a bug with a stinger. Little they know is a 2332 with dual Webers on it. And that thing would just carry the front end, first and second gear. And I would just ruin people's days with that thing.
Yeah, I'll just never forget that blue bug. We're cruising there and we pulled up a stoplight, and I got the cam, got the whole 9 yards, big block muscle car from the 60s, and I'm blowing this guy some pipe, and this freaking bug just embarrassed the crap out of me. Like, I hadn't even got past the stripe where you stop at, and this dude's on the other side of the street kind of stuff. But, I mean, that was as close as I got to be embarrassed by a sleeper, because I don't think he even stayed in it past the intersection. He realized that Mercury didn't have any kind of beans like that. Yeah. So,
for me, my first ruin was when the WRXs, remember in the blue with the gold rims? Remember the Subaru WRX came out?
Oh yeah, like 05, 04.
Yeah, and I had that Dart, right? And it was a street racer car. I didn't have the nitrous on, had nothing on there, and I was just like, I'm just gonna blow this guy out of the water. Did not happen that way at all. All-wheel drive, he basically just dumped it, and I was spinning, and he was so far ahead of me. I was just like, holy crap, was that thing faster than I thought it was?
The Subaru. Yeah, when I was stationed in Japan, I had a girlfriend there. Her mom had a Subaru wagon, and I treated it like the one of the Chrysler 2.2s. I pulled up the emergency brake, and this thing's all-wheel drive, so I just pulled the emergency brake up, right? And it's got a clutch. So I'm just letting the clutch out, and I'm giving it the gas as I'm letting the clutch out, and I'm watching the boost gauge climb until all the dash lights came on, and then I just let off the brake, right? Awesome. I didn't know that Subarus didn't like that. And they push head gaskets out, and they freaking blow the mains out of them. And it's like, oh, crap. And hey, what happened to my car? Do you know what happened to my car? The engine's blown up. Like, oh, I have no idea.
No idea.
No clue. But, yeah, they didn't like it. They don't like that kind of stuff. So Tom Brown says, Dallas, can the Pontiac Slant 4s run in your slant races? Actually, to tell you the truth, this year I loved the Slant 6 race that I had last year. The problem was with that, you need car count. You need people. And unfortunately, it just wasn't there. And some of it was because we got 100% chance of rain the day of the race, right?
That's right.
When you look on your phone, it says 100% chance of rain. And it did rain. It rained from 2 to 4 in the morning. But it killed anybody that was going to come.
That's right.
And Shane was there. He saw it. I mean, there was people towed from all over. There was guys there from Texas and North Dakota and Pennsylvania. And I mean, it was like, holy cow, did we draw the ones that did come, they came and they were impressive.
Yeah.
But there just wasn't enough car count to make it worthwhile to have its own event, stand on its own 2 legs yet. Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And this year, the plan was to do an inliner national challenge where it was all inlines.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was it started getting to $6 a gallon of gas. The track I was having it at was KD Dragway. Everybody was sweating the economy. The Slant guys, the group was telling me they probably weren't going to come because gas prices were through the roof. And so I kind of pulled the plug on it. And then KD dropped us probably because of that. I'm not sure. I never have got any kind of verbal confirmation of why. But when we have an inliner national challenge next year, you can run that Pontiac inline 4, and it's not a slant 4. Well, I guess it technically is, huh? Because it's half of a 389.
Yeah,
it's the trophy 4. All right, so let me catch up here.
He's talking about a 440.
All right. Bit Made Muscles asking anybody see the Chevette running Rocky Mountain Drag Week? Runs 11s with a 4.3 liter V6 and a carb. I saw that. It's white. I have a. I did one of those when I was younger.
You know, that's one thing is I haven't tuned in anything on Rocky Mountain Drag Week this week. I just haven't had desire. Maybe I don't know, but I just hadn't done it. I watched all the rest of them, but for some reason, just never turned into
this one. Just kind of ran across my Facebook feed where they were doing pictures of that 4.3 liter.
Oh yeah.
And I actually had done a V6 turbo Buick in one of those in like, oh dang, 94. It didn't even last a week. Blew the freaking motor up. Oh, it was so much fun. I put a 4-speed in it. It looked like a regular Chevette.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. And if you thought, small car, big motor was rickety, man, the Chevette had to be the worst.
Yeah.
It had to be the worst. It just didn't handle when you put any weight in the front. That little Isuzu 4-cylinder just didn't hold up like anything compared to what a cast iron V6 block would do. Let's see.
Fab race repeat is saying Dallas. Let's talk later. It's right underneath the one that you got going right now.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah, he's wanting to talk later about doing this this race. I did catch this next one. He says there's a nasty little pale yellow 4-door Rambler here in the Tidewater area. The thing surprised a lot of people. Disappeared as quickly as it appeared. True sleeper.
Yep.
Sleeper. Let's see. I remember smoking a 93 Mustang GT convertible with my old 73 electric 225, 455 and a switch pitch, and a 390 gear. I bet you that made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, right.
I still smile when I think about the look on that guy's face. Yeah, I was always the guy that was the one that was trying to make the sleeper because all I could really afford was just the fast street car.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I was always that guy. Oh, Aaron says he was in the Navy in San Diego in 1996. Man, me too. What ship are you on? I was on Vincennes, man. Vincennes.
In 96, I was on my way. I was still in Poway, getting ready to move to Georgia for a couple of years.
Oh, how'd you like that? Hot?
Yeah, Georgia wasn't my thing. I like Tennessee much better.
Do you?
Yeah, it's not. I got to tell you, man. Here it's, when they're talking about, oh, it's so hot outside, man. I've been to the desert. This ain't nothing outside.
Yeah, but the humidity is staggering here.
Yeah, but it where I live at least it's not so bad. I'll drive. I drive my Dart still around. I don't care. It doesn't seem to bother me.
Danny Boyd says he took his driver's ed class in a Chevette automatic, so that had to be an anemic turd. To tell you the truth, my grandpa bought like about 10 Domino's Pizza Chevettes at an auction. Yeah, and they were all had an Isuzu diesel in them. It was a diesel, non-turbocharged, probably like a 2-liter diesel. That thing would knock down 55 miles to the gallon.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Right? But God, it was anemic, and it would not go over like maybe 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. The Whitetail Rancher says the fastest car I've ever had was a 69 Beetle with WRX boxer in it.
Yep.
I couldn't hold on to the top of it. I'm sure because you got to remember it's still 69 Beetle steering, suspension, brakes,
wing. It's designed like a wing. After 80 miles an hour, they lose almost 100 pounds of force on the rear end because of because the air going underneath them. And that's why a Volkswagen, like when I used to drag race mine, and when it was turbocharged, I'd pull it into 4th gear, and it would literally, you could feel the car start to pick up over 80 miles an hour, and it would actually start to drift, and it was like wanting to fly away. And that's why a lot of those people will put a wing on the back of them for that reason. It's literally designed because it's completely flat underneath and rounded.
That totally makes sense why the Porsches of that era went to that whale tail. Remember the whale tail Porsche?
Absolutely. Because it was
100% why, because it would have had the same kind of body design.
That's right. So that's when I raced in. There was a class. It was called the Super Stock class, and you had to run 165 tires on the rear, and you couldn't run any wing, which leveled the playing field. You could run whatever engine you wanted, whatever combination you wanted, but you had to have 165, tires on the rear, and no wing. So you would get out of the hole hard, but then you're just really holding on from 8th mile on to the quarter mile, just trying to keep the thing from actually lift off.
And here's what's weird. So that my race car is an 88 Ford Thunderbird, which was originally designed to run 200 miles an hour in NASCAR. That was its sole purpose in life, right?
Yep.
They didn't care nothing about drag racing. It wasn't until Glidden started wrecking everybody with that car. Actually, he was doing it with the 83 as well. But what was weird is we took it to I took it up to Fontana one time and run the whole quarter. And I would run, like in the 8th mile, I'd run 108, 109 miles an hour was usually kind of the number, maybe 110 if I had a good day, right? But up there, when it hit about, because it run through the traps about 136, 137.
Yeah.
But when it hit about 120, it would get quiet inside the cabin of the car. And you could feel the car like hunker down and become more stable.
Wow.
Like 120. It was the weirdest thing and it's the opposite of what you're talking about with that bug, but it was factory designed to run 200 miles an hour in Talladega.
Yeah, car got stable. Yeah.
And it was just the way it was designed, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
I never got it fast enough to really do, and I really wasn't paying attention if I did. But man, that was the first time I ever felt it feeling that way. So Aaron says, DD972, the Ole, an instructor at Fleet Training Center. I was only in San Diego. Let's see, December 96 to June 97. I was on Vincennes, and we hit the bricks and went to Japan. And I was stuck in Japan for 3 years after that. So I probably didn't see you, buddy, but I probably met you on the waterfront, or at least passed your crossed your path on the waterfront. Let's see. Jonathan Couchy says I didn't exist in the 90s.
Right. Shows our age, right?
Been born in any other time, specifically 1938. Turn 18 and 56 and live out the hot rodding area. That would be a bitching time to do that. Yeah, you didn't miss out on much in the 90s. It really, cars were piles. They were kind of anemic.
Yeah.
12s was a good number.
Yeah.
I remember in the 2000s when guys were nitrous oxide spraying the 5-liter Mustangs down into like the 9s with the T5. Beyond impressed, right? Now today, if you run 750, you got a turd. It was just a different time frame. All the cars were junk.
Yeah, they're crap. Yeah, it was like he's right. I remember I had a 13-second car at that time, and I was like, you were just like, oh my God, he runs 13 seconds. You got to be careful of that car. That was.
Well, my Regal ran 1570s, right?
Yeah.
And it was a 2-barrel 350. I mean, it was virtually a junkyard takeout motor in an 81 Regal.
Yeah.
But the sad part was I literally could take that car and go whack a brand new Camaro.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new Camaro at that time, 91. They probably didn't run anything better than 1570. And that's if you got like the TPI 350. They were not fast.
I was at that cruise night that we were talking about. This is with my Volkswagen, and I took on the brand new Vet in the 94, 95 Vet, whatever it was. Uh-huh. And they're like, he's going to smoke you. I was, when I pulled fourth gear, I looked back to see where he was at, and his headlights were so far back there. I literally let off the throttle and just not really coasted, but just kind of did half throttle and still beat that guy on the Center City drag strip raceway. We called it right there. So yeah.
Well, that's funny, man. Yeah. I raced a guy right on Rosecrans in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I had that Mercury Cyclone. I was actually leaving the auto hobby shop on NTC. And I pulled out on Rosecrans, turned left, went towards the west. And man, there's this car just sawing my bumper off. And I'm like, what the hell? When we get down to the next light, he pulls up next to me. It's in a brand new 96 Grand Sport Vet. I mean, this thing had to be, it had to be like let's say October of 95, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around there. It was right before NTC closed. So yeah, that had to be about October of 95.
Yeah.
And this guy, I look over at him and I'm like, what a douchebag. This guy is freaking tearing my bumper off, right? And he flips me off and I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to give you some fucking heat here. So I stood on that Mercury, man, and that vet, I mean, they were like, what were they, 285 horse probably at that time? I mean, that was a good number. I mean, damn, this was the top of the line vet. Well, it was LT4. It might have been 300 horse. But, man, that Mercury just left that thing like it didn't even run. And, you're laughing all the way down the street.
Yeah, right. I was.
It was always like that with the Camaros, the Firebirds. All the kids that had daddy's money, they'd be out there driving that crap, and they get the doors blown off by a $300 Regal, right? All right.
That's funny.
Let's see. Don English wants to put his road toad in a wind tunnel. I don't know what the road toad is. Is it an inside joke? Art Jones says he had an 84 turbo coupe. I know exactly what you mean about the high-speed stability. It felt kind of eerie to me. It did. And it gets quiet, and you're like, I thought the car had broke, right? Like, is it not running good now? I can't quite tell. It was still pulling, and I didn't have any smoke, and it just weird. It just got eerie.
Yeah. Everything I've owned has been super unstable over 100 miles an hour. They never get better. It just, except for the street bikes and the sport bikes, but cars, everything's got worse. My Dart is the worst. It just, you're all over the road.
Oh, the Whitetail Rancher says the new C8s are pretty hot. I guess I'm never going to find out. Just like C1 through C8, I'm probably never going to own not one of them. Now, to tell you the truth, I have contemplated it because I've seen some of those like 87, 88 vets come up for like $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever taken the time to look underneath, the whole entire front of the car opens up, right? Backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever taken the time to look at the front suspension engineering in those things,
amazing.
It is, oh God.
Mm-hmm.
The aluminum upper and lower control arms, the chassis, it's just fantastic. I always wanted to put a Buick V8 in one. And that's because the engine is 150 pounds lighter than a Chevrolet small block. So how would that vet handle losing 150 pounds off the nose?
Yeah. Well, some of those vets are almost 50-50 right off the bat.
Well, now you're looking at 49, 51, right? That's pretty cool idea. It would turn like I wouldn't mind doing that.
It would turn like a Porsche then. You're basically turning it from the rear end,
Oh, yeah. But I mean, so the thing about the Buicks, and that's my whole goal, is my Regal, it was designed to do 200 miles an hour at Talladega too. I had an 81. So it was the first year. And if you know the history of NASCAR, 81 was the year of the Regal. And that's why 82 was actually the first year of the Grand National, because it freaking just mowed everybody down the field until if you showed up at Daytona in 82 and half the field was this Regals, right?
Yeah.
And, but 350 Buick 2-barrel, and then I could easily go 130, 140 miles an hour in that thing. It would pull all the way to red line in high gear with a 255 gear. I think that, it's just one of those engines that makes good enough torque to pull all the way through. It doesn't get bogged down.
Yeah.
Right? And the Buicks are notorious for the high top end. So I wouldn't mind putting one of those vets and then try to do the Spectre 316 or whatever. I don't even know if that even exists anymore. What's all those races that were like that? You had the Spectre race. You had the, they were all out west, like in Nevada and Texas and Arizona. They were those, it was like a rally race, but it had like top speed unlimited.
Oh, like the Silver State Classic.
Like Silver State Classic, yes. That was another one. I wouldn't mind doing that one either.
No, I'm actually, that's what I'm building the 68 for, the Desert Dart. That's what I'm going to do with it. It's going to be a multifaceted. They actually have one in Texas. They have one in Nebraska, and then they have the Silver State. But the one in Texas and the one in Nebraska, they're actually, the one in Nebraska is really cool because it's a really tight corner track with high speed, and it's a really, it looks really fun. So I'm going to do some of that open road racing with it. 100%. Yeah.
Well, dude, that's the kind of stuff I always want to do. I told you, I like wrecking records, you know, with like home built stuff. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I want to do. Let's see here. Whitetail ranchers. I own a lot of those damn things, duds, but they do handle pretty well. That they're just turds. Yeah, and he's talking about that 80s vet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, all right. Who's ready to spend 120K on a new 2023 final year Hellcat Challenger? Yeah, not this cowboy.
Not me either.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I had the choice between that and a really bitchin' 68 Dart, I would take the 68 Dart.
Well, and here's Danny Boyd says that DW, Darrell Waltrip, won the championship that year, I believe, and he was in a Regal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And you know what? The only reason I gravitated toward the Regal is because of the Buick. My old man actually told me, I said, you know, I'm going to get a car. And he said, all right, well, if you get anything besides a Buick, you might as well just pack your shit and get out of my house. Like, oh, okay.
That kind of settles that, right?
Yeah. Guess I'll find something in a Buick flavor. But,
you know, it's funny you say that because my parents, believe it or not, were Toyota people.
Oh, really?
People. Yeah. My dad had a Toyota Supra. It was the first car I ever took over 130 miles an hour. It was a 87 turbocharged inline 6, and it was a 5-speed. And I used to take that thing out all the time. And that's actually where I learned how to start driving cornering cars. I was 16 years old in one of those brand new cars and out destroying it, just having a great time. But yeah.
Huh. I would have never figured that you would have grown out of a Toyota family like that.
Yeah, right. Honestly, what really did it for me was the ride in that 68 Dart I was telling you about a few weeks back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did I ever tell anyone about that here? No.
I don't think you mentioned it on here.
Oh, well then here we go. So this is how it happened: is that my dad was an accountant, and you know he was really into Supras, and I thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And then he says, "Hey, one of my clients has got this old car, and in Poway they used to have this car driving at the Chicken Pie Diner. So every Wednesday night they'd have a car show." And he goes, "Hey, this guy's going to bring his old car," and he said it's something special, and he didn't really know what it was. He shows up, and I could hear this thing coming. He goes, "Oh, that's his car." And he pulls in. It's a real LO23 Hemi Dart,
super stock,
4-speed, super stock, real car, real one, right? That was raced by and I don't remember the person's name, but it was raced by someone. It was and then he bought it way back in the day, and so on and so forth. He took me for a ride in that. And if you're familiar with Poway, we're at Chicken Pie Diners right there on Pomerado Road and Twin Peaks. We got on Pomerado Road and we go north, and there's a light right there, and we caught the red light. And I remember him reaching over, and it had these like aluminum seats in it, and there's no headrest. And he told me, he goes, just kind of hold on to the back of your neck, like, you know, hold on like this. And he brought that thing up, and I've never heard an engine go to like say 7,000 RPM and then just hammer the clutch.
Yeah.
Absolute. I really thought the engine was going to come through the floorboard. I remember him grabbing gears with this big grin, and it was complete fear. And it was just all sensory overload. And then he did it again on the way back. And from that day on, I was absolutely hooked, and I wanted that car. And in fact, to me, the 68 Dodge Dart is the most iconic car because that was the first car to ever scare the crap out of me. And you know, imagine that you've never been in anything but a Toyota Supra that's never really launched. It would just go top end. And then some guy gives you a ride in a real LO23 Hemi Dart that was drag raced, you know, twin carbs on it with a 4-speed, and he does a real launch on the street in this thing and just pulling
hammers
gears.
It.
Yeah, speed shifting the whole time. And I remember getting out, and I was like this. And,
oh, dude, yeah, I know
that's what did it. I was done. I was ruined for life. Ruined.
My old man had that 70 Stage 1 Buick, and it was a race car by the time I was a young kid, right? Like, it was probably a race car before I was born, I'm assuming, but
yeah.
Oh, I remember being about 2 years old, and the car had no seats. It had one seat, right? And it was probably out of like a Chevy van, a real small seat. And he used to put a spare tire, turn it upside down in the back, like where the seat pan was for the actual rear seat. And he'd tell me sit in there, and then we would go drive it out in the country, and he would test it out for that coming weekend. Man, I remember that car had so much torque. You'd watch the front end come up, and it would lay you back so hard that you couldn't move. You're just
you're frozen.
Oh God, And I used to look forward to that every week. My old man would run me down that. It was like a mile from our house out in the country, just hammer on it coming back.
Yeah.
And I would look forward to that. I wouldn't miss it anytime he went out there. And but I know that I was hooked from that point forward. I mean, forever, for the rest of my life, I was going to have not a drug addiction, but a car addiction.
Yeah, well, it's worse than a drug addiction because you can get help for a drug addiction. Cars, you're done.
The drug addiction it wrecks your health. Car addiction, not so much. This kind of wrecks your mind and I guess your joints and your body and all that hard work, right?
Right. Yeah.
Let's get back on track here, I guess.
Yeah.
Tom Brown's saying that he always thought that Gerald Weiger should put a Buick V8 engine in the W8 Vector instead of the Olds engine. It would have been lighter. And it would have been. Actually, there was a Buick powered sports car called the Apollo GT 5000. It was actually the car used in Herbie the Love Bug, black car that the bad guy drove. But they were powered by 215 Buicks and then later on 300 Buicks. Don English says that was a true neck breaker. True neck breaker, Shane. Yes, so
absolutely. He told me to hold on like this. And I remember putting my hands behind my neck and then like leaning my head forward and then barely like just total fear. But yeah.
Yeah. What Fab Race Mon Repeat says, Shane, your Hemi Dart story, that's the same reason I like Cyclones.
Right.
But San Diego had so many real muscle cars. I went to a cars swap meet and show that used to be at Jack Murphy Stadium, right? So
yes.
I'll give you an idea and those things only ran until about 98 maybe, and they were gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went out there to a swap meet, and I was looking for parts from a 66 Mercury Cyclone, and a guy had a top loader 4-speed that was for an FE, right? He was going to sell it to me for something. I don't remember what it was, but I was standing there talking to him. This guy came up and asked if he had a starter for an FE, right? Oh, what size FE? And he's like, 427. And the guy's like, if I got a starter for that, it's going to be like $200, right? And I'm like, for a used starter? He said, oh yeah, 427 stuff is going to be expensive. And the guy's like, yeah, no problem. I'll pay it. And I said, well, what's it going on? It's going on my 67 Shelby Cobra. And I'm like, 67 Shelby Cobra? And there's only a handful of them suckers made. And he's like, yeah, and I got one. It's right over there at the car show, right? And I said, well, what do you need a starter for? He said, yeah, I want the start to leave, and the starter's bad. It won't start. And I said, oh, well, how about this? I'll give you a push start if you give me a ride in around the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, that's a fair deal. I mean, because I'm doing all the work. The guy's got to be in there to pop the clutch.
Yeah.
And he said, I was trying to push start it myself and I couldn't get to work. And I said, yeah, you're probably using first gear, right? I said, just put it in second and I'll push you. And then as soon as it starts running, just hammer the clutch to the floor and rev it up, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll jump in the passenger side. And that's kind of how it went down. And then he took me out in the parking lot at Jack Murphy Stadium. It used to be that's where the Chargers play football, right? So It's a huge parking lot, huge, ginormous parking lot. They used to run quarter-mile drag races in there, right? Or eighth mile?
Eighth mile drags. And at the same time, they would have cone dodging going on. They would have the SCCA.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, and they'd be on two different sides of the stadium.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's how big this parking lot was. So this guy's like, all right, you get in and put your seatbelt on. Now hang on. And I'm thinking, well, how fast can this be? I rode in this stage 1 Buick, and oh my God, that thing's like a freaking missile, man. I mean, it just laid you back and it just kept pulling. And here's the thing that I noticed. I'd never, outside of drag racing, I'd never seen a 427 Ford FE motor on the street ever in my life.
Yeah.
That thing revved like a 302 Ford. right?
It's
It
fast.
just freaking sings. Once it gets up to like 2,500, it would just sing, and it just pulled, and it didn't let off. And I, from that point forward, like, man, I gotta find me a 427. And then, well, everybody wants to find a 427. There's some ungodly amount of dollars these days. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, but let's see. Jonathan Couchy says, what got me, my uncle has my grandma's 68 Barracuda S. All right, that was my very first car. Not sure what engine it was built though. We went on the street and burned out going to like 100 miles an hour when I was like 6. Then did a bunch of donuts. If it's a Formula S, that was probably a 340 car or a 383 car. I think that's the only thing they came with.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah. And what's funny, that was my first car, was that 68 Barracuda. Those are the cars I thought of. When I think of super stock drag racing, those are the cars I think of. It's the Barracuda, the Dart, right?
Yep.
And when I saw that Barracuda, I'm like, oh, I got to have that.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrid. I mean, there was rust holes in it. Like you could have fit a human being through it, flying at 60 miles an hour. Let's see here. Daddy Boy says Cobras are light. Yeah, that little sucker was real light, and it ran hard. So yeah, see, here you go. Mitchell Hennings. My roommate had a Boss 429 in La Mesa. I think a lot of that has to do with the Southern California explosion was actually huge in the 60s, right? And that's when you had the aerospace industry just freaking blowing up out there. Everybody had a good job. Gas was cheap. Cars were cheaper. And people were buying good stuff. And the funny thing was, in the 90s, it was still all over the road.
Yeah. In the 90s, you could still buy a $500 driving muscle car and the next weekend take it to the street races. It was. And I it's funny you said that in the 60s. Also, too, in the 70s, a lot of those guys in the Air Force were getting transferred over there. And there was just, and the climate, the cars don't die. You know what I mean? They don't just rust away. They just get parked. And then some person like me or you's got this car crack addiction, buys it, and you got like this perfect,
I tell you, man, I got off the plane, and it was the very first time I'd ever been there, and I'm getting in a taxi to drive from, and this is San Diego. I get in a taxi to go from there to Fleet ASW base. Okay, from the airport to there is a quarter of a mile. I didn't know that. It took me 40 minutes to get there because the taxi took me around every nook and cranny and all Point Loma so they could rack up the dollars on me to get me to pay for, whatever, a 2-hour taxi ride or a 40-minute taxi ride. And I did, like a dummy. I'd never been there. I was just coming from boot camp. And we're looking at all these cars, and I'm like, oh, my God. Look, a Maverick. Well, Mavericks to me were like few and far between. Them suckers rusted out on the lot at Ford, and in Illinois.
Yeah.
But here they are in San Diego, totally unrusted Maverick. And it would be a grabber at that, And but it was all this stuff that you had never seen before. 50s, 60s cars still on the road in the 90s. And that's because they had no emissions requirement and people were keeping them until they couldn't keep them running.
That's right. Yeah.
So, oh, man. Let's see. Well, we've got 7 minutes left. We'll hit a couple of them here. Don English says, my brother just pulled a 429 out of his new Derby car, 72 Mercury.
Wow.
I told him I'll take it just to have it. Well, I tell you what, you should probably bring that to the No Name Nationals and see if Bear Rose Garage wants to drag that thing back to Idaho, because I'm sure he'd be in love with a 429.
Yeah.
Mitten Made Muscle. My dad sold the car in the early 90s to a Jeep guy. He put 360 in his Jeep. Oh, he must be talking about something else. Huh.
Oh, what he was saying before is that he said, I was born into hot rods. Literally, I was brought home from the hospital in my dad's 68 Javelin that had both, and Aaron's built 360 and a 727. So that's what he was referring to.
Yeah, the Javelin. That was one of the few cars the AMC made that actually looked good, right? Yes. Javelin, AMX, Scrambler, right?
Yeah.
But man, you start getting outside of those, and it's like the Rebel machine looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Man, the Marlin. Who was on LSD when they designed that sucker, man?
Everyone was, because they were doing the acid challenge.
Like that thing has a back window as big as the bubble on the International Space Station, man. I mean,
Right?
It's enormous. But yeah, Pacer and Gremlin. But well, guys, we're winding down. We got 5 minutes left. If you have another question or two, throw them out there. Shane and I will grab hold of them and see what we can do. Other than that,
I got a couple things that I'm working on. I'm gonna probably have it by next. Is that the next thing I'm working on right now is I'm making for the Slant 6 on the rail for the valve cover. They always seem to dimple in. I've been wanting to do this forever, but I finally made a ring that goes around there, so when you torque the bolts down, it puts even pressure all the way around it.
Right,
it's
like
actually,
the 302 Fords were on the
exactly,
valve covers and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So I made one that goes all the way around for a Slant 6. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I'll show it to everyone. It looks pretty badass.
Did you see that Mopar Performance valve cover for the Slant 6 that guy had at the Slanted Nationals last year?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
Yeah. I just, for some reason, I always liked just factory valve covers on a car. That's always been my thing. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah, just I'm ridiculous like that. But like, everyone wants, like when you get a Hemi, like even my race car Hemi, I'm gonna put the plastic black, factory looking valve covers on it, because I just think that just looks cool.
When you saw my super stock motor, what did you think about those 300 valve covers on the 350 flange?
It was awesome, man. I loved it. That's actually what really got me off on that thing. I was looking at it, go, man, that thing looks like stock. I think it's awesome. I love that shit.
Yeah. Well, John Wilburn's down here saying I'm a closet AMC Matador fan.
Really?
Says that I am. I personally am. No, I'm not. I do like these things though. What about a convertible 4x4 on the 256 straight 6 AMC Eagle? I like the AMC Eagle 4-door. Like it's actually like the Cherokee platform, right?
Well, yeah, but what's funny is the AMC Eagle. I tell this to the wife all the time. How many times do you drive around town nowadays and like you see the Infinities that looks like a car with the big tires? All that is just an AMC Eagle revamped with rounded corners on it.
I liked the AMC Eagles. They were freaking cool because they were same as a Cherokee, except some of them came in wagons. You could get them like a super practical family car.
Yeah,
that would get car gas mileage while being 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, I agree.
And it wasn't full-time 4-wheel drive, because I remember the Jeeps being full-time 4-wheel drive, and it's like 4 miles to the gallon. Yay!
Yeah.
But let's see. Dizzy Izzy saying, "Evening, John. Take care, Dallas and Shane. Shining side up, people. He's out of here." All right. Well, we're winding down too. We got 3 minutes left. Yes, the AMC Hornet became the Eagle. I liked them.
Yeah. Honestly, if I could get anything AMC, it would definitely be an Eagle. That was the one car I always did it for me. I dug it.
Yeah, I like that one too. I did like, they had an AMX in like the 80s, 82, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it was based off of. It was a little hatchback car. But that one, they were so rare. They had to be super rare. But I'd never seen another one. This one guy in high school, he had it. He was about 4 years older than me. Had one of those AMC Eagles, or the AMC, an AMX, it was orange.
Yeah.
It looked cool as hell. But I've never seen another one. But the Eagles, they used to be everywhere when I was a kid. And I think what would be neat is get one of those, find the new, a newer like 2001, 2, 3, 4 Cherokee. Take that 4-liter out with the fuel injection and put it right in that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Well, all right. Well, fellas and ladies, we got less than a minute left. Anything you want to plug there, Shane?
No, just going to drag week, and then actually the No Name Nationals. I'm really looking forward to it. Actually, I do. I enjoyed your guys' little commercial you guys made. That was cool.
I'll be there commercial?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, that was John Wilburn, all John Wilburn. I didn't do that one.
It's one
So,
of those things that I never watched anything about the hashtag No Name Nationals. If I would have just watched one of those, I could have done one of those too and just put it in there, because I thought I was watching that going, that's actually pretty badass.
oh yeah. Well, and John says he's got some more coming too. Aaron says, I enjoy you guys. Thanks for answering my Hemi question. I'll have more next week. Well, no problem. We'll be back next week. Regular bat time, regular bat channel, right?
That's right.
So,
and then there's going to be drag week. I'm going to bring in my computer, and then I'll see if I can get in on Wednesday for this. I'll be in a hotel, and then the following week it's going to be, you're going to have a hard time because you're going to be at the No Name Nationals.
I am, and I'm going to be over there early, but I hopefully will have internet set up by then, and I'll be able to stream live. And what is it? Large and in charge of No Name Nationals. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, the Fab Race Mob repeats saying some guy's having a show called No Name Nationals. That'll be happening. And guess what? I won't have to plug the No Name Nationals after the No Name Nationals anymore. I'll have to take a couple of months off.
Right.
I won't know what to think, have all that extra time. But
man, we could do that sleeper racing. How about that?
Oh, dude, I still think I should do that. Yeah, I should do that one. The Sandman. Yeah. All right. Well,
all right.
That's it for Wednesday night at I guess it'd be Wednesday Tech Talk Live, but
yeah.
I got to come up with a new picture for that now this week.
Yeah.
I got to make something just drastically different to get a lot of people in here, because it's been the same picture for 3 weeks. Hey, it's almost time for a guest. Do we have anybody we could throw up for a guest?
I'm working on that actually, but the next couple of weeks next 3 weeks are going to be a little difficult for anything really going on.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right. And I don't need to put any more on my plate. I got enough. I'm hoping I can make all the other stuff meet up. So
I think that after No Name Nationals, we'll do one more, and then we'll try to bring someone out.
Okay. Well,
and I do want to say one more thing. If you have any questions, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. Once again, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. People have been throwing up questions, and I've been answering them, been sending them off. So if you got any questions we didn't catch here, just send it slantdailygarage@yahoo.com.
Well, that's it for Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next Wednesday. We're out of here.
All right. You guys, thanks for coming out. You guys take it easy.
Yep. Thanks for watching.